Hello dear students. Today the topic of our grammar lesson is transitive and intransitive verbs. This video includes the definitions, use and identification of these verbs in sentences. The learning objectives of today's lesson. At the end of the lesson, the students will be able to know what a verb is, to define transitive and intransitive verbs and their kinds, to identify these verbs in different sentences. Now, our first task is to define a verb. What is a verb? A verb is a word which shows an action in a sentence. For example, he visits the health resort every year. He talks to her on phone in the evening. They had finished their work before the guests came. But before discussing transitive and intransitive verbs, it's also important to know about what an object is. An object is a word upon which an action is performed. It is also the recipient of an action. For example, the boy wrote a letter. Here, letter is an object in this sentence. She told us a story. There are two objects in this one sentence. The first one is us and the second one is story. Whenever there are two objects like us and story in a sentence, one is direct object and the other is indirect object. Here the story which is told or the thing which is given is always a direct object, and the recipient or the listener or the one who receives the action, that person or that thing is the recipient, that is indirect object. So, whenever there is an object or objects in a sentence, the verb in that sentence would be called transitive verb. And whenever there is no object in a sentence, the verb in that sentence would be called intransitive. Now we are going to discuss the first type. The first type is transitive verb. I am going to define this verb. A transitive verb is a verb that requires one or more objects to complete its meanings. For example, she opened the door. Here, the door is an object and the verb opened is a transitive verb. The next example, he gave me an apple. There are two objects, me and apple. Here the verb is a transitive verb. But whenever there are two objects, we call that transitive verb as ditransitive. There are some more examples. Look at these examples. The first one is, they played cricket. Jasim threw the ball. Now in the first one, that is cricket. Cricket is an object. So whenever the verb takes an object, that is transitive verb. Played is a transitive verb. In the second one, threw is a transitive verb. The third one, can he make a call? Next, I caught a cold. The poet loves rainbows. Jenny conveyed the message. She admired your bravery. We do not face him. They love pet animals. The kid switched on the TV. He has learned his lesson. The student found her lost book. My father gave me a gift. I gave my sister a mobile phone. The thieves stole his car. They sold some books. We enjoyed the concert. The player kicked the ball. In all these examples, the transitive verbs were followed by object or objects. As I told you that there are two types of transitive verbs. The first one is called monotransitive and the second one is called ditransitive verb. Here I am giving you some examples of monotransitive verb. He read a story. I bought a new shirt. Now in these sentences, in the first one, a story is an object, only one object, so the verb read would be monotransitive because it needed only one object. And in the second one, that is just one object, a new shirt. So I bought a new shirt. In this sentence, bought is a monotransitive because it took only one object. In case of ditransitive verb, we have two objects in a sentence. One is direct object and the other is indirect object. Here we have an example. He told me a story. In this sentence there are two objects. The first one, that is a story, direct object. The second one, that is me as indirect object. And in the second sentence, I bought him a new shirt. There are two objects, a new shirt and him. A new shirt is a direct object and him is an indirect object. Monotransitive verb. A monotransitive verb is that verb which takes only one object and that is a direct object. For example, he has grown a garden in his house. Grown is a monotransitive verb because it has one direct object, that is a garden. John ate a cake. Ate here is monotransitive because it has just one object and that is direct object. My father borrowed a book. Here borrowed is a monotransitive verb and a book is a direct object. A ditransitive verb. A ditransitive verb is that verb which takes both a direct and indirect object. For example, he showed us his war medals. John bought her a cake. My father gifted me a car on my birthday. So in these sentences, in the first one, us is indirect object and his war medals, that's direct object. In the second one, her is indirect object and a cake is direct object. And in third one, me is indirect object and a car is direct object. Now, intransitive verb. An intransitive verb is a verb which does not allow any object. For example, he walks fast. In this sentence, walks is an intransitive verb and fast is an adverb. There is no object in this sentence. She was laughing in the meeting. It is blowing hard today. We arrived around midday. She is coughing loudly. Your baby cries a lot. His grandfather died last year. The rain fell heavily. I go to work every day. We sat on the bench. He stood in the corner. We waited, but nobody came. Now in this sentence there are two intransitive verbs, waited and came. Every single person voted. The apes played in the woods. He disappeared after the party. The speaker discussed in the video. It snowed. We laughed. He cried. When did they arrive? Another type of verb is MBtransitive verb. An MBtransitive verb is that verb which is used both transitively and intransitively. This verb may or may not require a direct object. English has many MBtransitive verbs. The examples may be read, break, and understand. In this sentence, I read the book. The book is an object and read is a transitive verb. But in another sentence, I read all afternoon. Here there is no object. All afternoon is adverb of time and read is here intransitive. So this word can be used both transitively and intransitively.